about international affairs among the American people. In particular, the black community have been taught and learned through example that international affairs are not our arena. That's why they call our struggle for human rights civil rights. That yours is a local issue, but it has nothing to do with international affairs. And this is one of the mistakes, the strategic mistake that black leaders in America made in our struggle. We should stay out of the realm of international, but it's the international pressure on America that preaches human rights, human dignity, preaches against dictators, and preaches that there should be democracy and the freedom of people to vote. There should be the freedom of women. They preach this, but yet and still they don't live it. And if we get involved in expressing our pain internationally, people gravitate towards it. And I'm going to use two classic examples, is the struggle of the black people in South Africa, the apartheid regime. As long as they kept it closed and we didn't know anything basically about it, they could continue. And that's the same pattern. When I was in occupied Palestine, they had Palestinian roads that you could only drive your car with the Palestinian plates on these roads, and they were the worst roads. In the hospitals, they made the Palestinian women choose between Israeli passports born as an Israeli instead of their identity as Palestinians. So it's a form of apartheid. So the center, there's three holy spots in the Muslim world: Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem. Because you know in Islamic history that the Muslim prayed towards Jerusalem until the Prophet, peace be upon him, revealed that we should pray towards Mecca. And because the Jews prayed towards Jerusalem even before Islam. And also in the Muslim world, it is in Jerusalem where the Prophet ascended to heaven, peace be upon him. So it's the third most sacred in the Muslim world. And for the Jews to claim that our spot is this spot, and they disrespect it. And the greatest disrespect is when the Muslims go to make prayers, or during Ramadan, or during our Eid, that they would shoot tear gas and fight the Muslims in that sacred spot. And the Jewish extremists that they don't talk about went into the mosque and killed Muslims in this sacred spot. So it's like fighting for the soul of our faith, and that we will not back down. That's what the Muslims are saying. You may kill us, you may slaughter us, you may use your media to make us seem like the villains or the bad people or the evil people, so that you can justify your oppression of the people. In our community in America, those black Americans who are Muslims, number one, and those who are knowledgeable, they understand what is happening with the Zionist state. And the Zionists reach back to history to say that, especially the European Zionists, that we have been victorious over all of the people of the earth and crushing them and taking their land and making it our land, and we will be victorious over the Palestinians. But the factor that they have left out, that Allah is with us, and though we have suffered, we have sustained, we have gone on. Since the time in 1947 and 48, where they pushed the Palestinians off their land and victimized them and put them in refugee camps.
The Israeli regime is completely aware that that Muslims of the world are very sensitive about the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but they they keep on disrespecting Al-Aqsa Mosque. What is the reason?
Well, this is intentional. They want to provoke a confrontation. They want to make the Palestinian people, who are largely Muslim, though some are Christian, they want to make them feel as if they are not safe. They want to send a message that they do not tolerate them, they do not accept them, they do not consider their existence to be legitimate. It's completely intentional. It's not accidental. They know that Al-Aqsa Mosque is sacred, and that's why they're targeting it. It is designed to provoke a confrontation and justify further violence and attack from Israel.
we can witness the presence of women, Palestinian women, are really active in the battles. What is the reason of this courageous act? Why women are present there?
Well, there's nothing particularly new about this. I mean, there's always been heroic women as part of the Palestinian struggle. Layla Khalid, for example, has a brave reputation for her brave acts. And Palestinian women have proven themselves over the course of the last 60 years to be very courageous in their fight against Israel. So I don't think that fighting for justice is only a thing that men do. I think women have a role to play in this. I think it also kind of reveals that in the U.S., the way we're trained to think about women's rights is that we see a woman in hijab, we say, oh, she's being oppressed. But I see so many pictures of women in hijab in Iran, but holding guns and defending their communities. And if that's not freedom and liberation, I don't know what is. I think in the West we seem to associate freedom with pornography or freedom with sexual what do you call it, promiscuity. And I don't think that's a correct equation to make. I think that women's liberation can be measured in how much of a role women are playing in society. And here in Iran and in the Palestinian resistance, women do play a very strong role.
Thank you. How do you see the reaction of international human rights organizations towards this issue, the Palestinian issue?
Well, they're not doing enough. They may issue token condemnations of Israel, but when it gets down to it, they're not pointing out that Israel is not legitimate. Israel has no right to exist. It's an illegal settlement. It was established in violation of every understanding of human rights, and that it's not that Israel makes some mistakes. Israel itself is a mistake. Israel is a criminal entity that needs to no longer exist. You know, at one point there was something called Rhodesia, and this was a white settler colony in Africa, but it was eradicated, and Zimbabwe came into existence. The Dutch East Indies was the name once given to what is now Indonesia, and that was eradicated to create Indonesia. So I hope that Israel will be eradicated and Palestine can come into existence.
The Iranian leader have announced that the West Bank should be armed as well as Gaza. How do you think this will affect if the West Bank is armed?
I think that people everywhere have the right to defend themselves, and the Palestinians especially, because they're facing a daily onslaught of terrorism, have the right to defend themselves, and they have the right to be armed, and they should be armed. However, I mean, the Israelis don't want that. The Israelis want them to be disarmed so that they are subject to their terrorism, but that's not correct. People have the right to protect themselves and defend themselves, and I hope that the Palestinians can arm themselves and protect their communities and resist Israel's crimes, and eventually that Israel can be defeated.
The Intifada has coincided with the suicidal attacks of Palestinians or Israelis. How do you see this?
Well, you know, the Palestinian people have been through so much brutality and so much repression. So many horrific things have been done to them that I don't even pretend for a moment that I could put myself in their shoes and understand what they're going through. In Western media, they like to ridicule the suicide bombing, say these are insane people and all of this, but that's just not a rational. That's not looking at the situation with an intellectual or rational lens. We can't understand what the Palestinians have been through. They've been dehumanized, repressed, brutalized their entire lives. They're fighting for their survival, and I think that they have the right to choose the manner in which they resist the repression from the Israelis.
How do you see the future of the Intifada?
I think that Israel is losing its support around the world. That this violence against the Al-Aqsa Mosque and all this is desperation from the Israelis. Much of the U.S. public has stopped supporting Israel. Much of the European community has stopped supporting Israel. And as much as the U.S. government continues to back up Israel, there is a change of world opinion. Israel has been very, very exposed in the world community, and they're losing the free pass they used to get from international institutions. The fact that there is a Palestinian flag now on display at the United Nations headquarters, this shows that the world is changing. And I think the Israelis see this. They see that the floodwaters are rising up around them and are becoming more violent. And I think Israel will be defeated. In fact, the CIA, it was leaked that the CIA even predicted the fall of Israel within the next 50 years. I think it's very, very likely to occur.
Thank you. Any more questions, Andy?
No, the United States is not going to do that. because to a certain, I mean, there are a lot of factors here. There's the Zionist lobby in America, which is playing a big role in this, but there's also the military-industrial complex. A big part of this, as I see it, is nothing more than a money laundering scheme. The United States gives money to support the Israeli military budget so the Israeli government can buy arms from the United States. And we know that arms exports are one of the major exports of the United States. So to a certain degree, it's a way for the United States government to give taxpayer dollars to General Dynamics. It is a way for the United States to give taxpayer dollars to General Electric. It is a money laundering scheme so that the United States can give U.S. dollars back to Raytheon and other defense contractors through the contracts that the Israeli government enters into with the United States government, and the Israeli government is buying those weapons with United States taxpayer dollars. Well, I think for that answer, you got to ask them. I don't think for them. I don't speak for them. The only thing that I can tell you is they may be fearful that as the Obama administration is winding down his second term, and as President Obama seems to have become more assertive in particular areas of legislation and other things, they may think that he may start to soften his position in the support of Israel, which is not going to happen by any stretch of the imagination. They may also be fearful that as Iran has been brought into the negotiations with Syria, that as the United States and the P5+1 have entered into the nuclear agreement with Iran, that a shifting in position closer to Iran, Israel may see this either as an immediate sense or perceive this as an immediate sense of jeopardy to their long-term mission, or they may see this as a future, in the future jeopardizing their position. And so they're trying to claim as much ground as they possibly can, which has always been their tactic. They try to claim as much ground as absolutely possible. And when they can't claim ground, then they just seem to fan the flames in order to raise the level of conflict so that, again, they can say, look, see, they're the ones that are aggressive. They're the ones that are breaking the agreements. They're the ones that are being unreasonable. They're the ones that fail to negotiate. We have a saying in the United States, particularly in African-American communities, don't start nothing, won't be nothing. And so if Israel would back away and allow some time for some of these tensions to decline, a reasonable, peaceful solution may very well be able to be accomplished. But it doesn't appear, based upon their actions, and again, this is not anti-Semitic, this is not anti-Israel. I'm looking at the history, I'm looking at the actions, and this is what the actions tell me.
All right. Going back to the process of the Intifada, you may know that this new wave of Intifada has been done by somewhat, we can say, suicide missions, right? The Palestinians are starting, some attacks on Israeli soldiers by going, for example, by night and trying to, at least injure some of the soldiers in Israel, and then they will end up killed or martyred. So, what do you see this way? How do you see the future of this process?
Well, I think as Israel continues to incite these instances through their actions, I think it's only going to get worse. there was a famous Palestinian psychiatrist by the name of Dr. Iyad El-Sarraj, who wrote an article, or maybe it was an opinion piece in Time magazine a number of years ago. This was when I want to say it was the first time that a Palestinian woman had been involved as a suicide bomber. And this, the fact that a woman got engaged in the conflict at this level got a lot of people's attention. And Dr. El-Sarraj wrote an article called Why We Blow Ourselves Up. And the fundamental premise of his article was people in the West interpret these actions as being crazy or insane. And he said, you must understand the difference between insanity and desperation. He said these, now he was speaking specifically about the Palestinian issue. He said that these Palestinian suicide bombers are not insane. These are the acts of a desperate people, a people who have come to the conclusion that the circumstances in their country are so dire, the oppression in their country is so great, that they are willing to use their bodies as the final weapon. And do not confuse their actions of desperation with actions of insanity. That was again, a very famous Palestinian psychiatrist, Dr. Iyad El-Sarraj, and I had a chance to interview him on my program my radio program before he passed, and he laid out some incredibly interesting distinctions to me